August 18, 2024, Vladimir Putin is received with full honors in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev personally gave Putin a tour of the city, taking him to the residential project known as White City, and then they visited the Russian Orthodox Cathedral of the Holy Mirror Bearers together. It was an official two-day visit, aimed at discussing international and regional issues, including the conflict with Ukraine. The footage recorded at that moment showed a cordial relationship between the two leaders. But just 4 months later, things would change completely. On December 25th of that same year, something terrible happened. An Azerbaijan Airlines plane crashed in Kazakhstan, killing dozens of people on board. The plane crash raised many suspicions, especially on the Azerbaijani side. That's because the plane appears to have been hit while flying over Russian territory. Initially, Russia defended itself by claiming that the aircraft had collided with birds. But the physical evidence told a completely different story. The fuselage was pierced by strange metallic objects, a pattern that is not consistent with a bird strike, as the Russians claimed. The damage, in fact, closely resembled that caused by a surface-to-air missile used in air defense systems. Time passed, and the suspicions that the plane had been shot down by a Russian missile grew every day. It was then that, a few months later, the suspicion was confirmed. Leaked recordings clearly showed that the plane had been shot down by a Russian air defense system.
Azimuth 338, range 75, 1000 altitude 490, speed 118.
And this was the trigger to start a crisis between the two countries. In recent weeks, the tension has exploded, and an unprecedented diplomatic crisis has taken over the region. And then, many people wondered, are we about to see a conflict between the two countries? But to answer that question, I need to show you what's really happening between Azerbaijan and Russia. And it all started a few years ago, when things were very different. Imagine the situation. For decades, Azerbaijan was living a kind of nightmare. It had lost an important part of its territory, a region called Nagorno-Karabakh, to Armenia, a neighboring country. And do you want to know who was behind this? Helping Armenia? Russia. Putin provided weapons, political support, and basically ensured that Armenia kept control over this area rich in natural resources. Meanwhile, Russia presented itself as a mediator, but as we've seen over time, it was on Armenia's side the whole time. Then, something extraordinary happened in 2020. Azerbaijan decided that it would no longer accept this situation. And here a new character enters our story: Turkey. Turkey offered Azerbaijan something that Russia had never given, a real chance to recover its territory. And do you know how they did that? With combat drones. And here we're not talking about simple drones. They were sophisticated war machines with special focus on the Bayraktar TB2 model, which later became famous for helping Ukraine against Russia. And what happened next was devastating for Putin. In just 44 days of war, these Turkish drones completely destroyed the Armenian defenses. But the worst part is that these defenses were made with Russian equipment, which until then was considered by many as the best in the world. It was a huge technical and political humiliation. Imagine how Putin felt. His ally lost the war, his military equipment proved to be ineffective and obsolete, and worse. He couldn't do anything to help. Russia, which always presented itself as the great regional power, was exposed as a giant with feet of clay. The situation got even worse when Turkey and Azerbaijan signed a military agreement in 2021. It wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a real commitment that the two countries would defend each other. For Azerbaijan, this meant having a much more reliable protector than Russia. For Turkey, it meant extending its influence in a strategic region. And here's the interesting part. Turkey and Azerbaijan are not just allies out of convenience. They share culture, language, and history. And that makes a big difference. Now, anyone who thinks Putin's humiliation ended there is mistaken. In 2023, Azerbaijan decided to finish the job it had started years earlier. They initiated a 24-hour military operation. Yes, just one day. And completely regained control of Nagorno-Karabakh. And guess what Russia did? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They had soldiers in the region, supposedly to keep the peace. But they just watched everything happen. And do you want to know why? Putin had all his forces tied up in Ukraine and couldn't risk opening a new front in the war. That's when, in June of 2024, the Russian soldiers simply packed their bags and left. It was the symbolic end of Russian influence in the region. Azerbaijan had gained not only its territory, but also its independence. In this tense context, something happened that changed everything. It was Christmas Eve of 2024. A plane from Azerbaijan Airlines, a Brazilian Embraer 190, was taking off from Baku to Grozny in Russian Chechnya. On board were 67 people, government officials, businessmen, families returning home for Christmas. But that morning, something was different. Ukraine had attacked Russian military targets with drones, and the Russian defense systems were in total panic. The operators had orders to shoot down anything they considered suspicious. When the Azerbaijani plane approached Russian airspace, the global positioning systems began to fail. This was no accident. Russia was interfering with the signals to confuse the Ukrainian drones. The pilot, losing orientation, tried to find a place to land when the unthinkable happened. A Russian missile hit the civilian plane. 38 people died. The investigation left no doubt. The fuselage was riddled with metal fragments, the unmistakable signature of a surface-to-air missile. And do you know what Putin's response was at the time? Nothing different from what was expected. He apologized for the tragic incident, but avoided taking direct responsibility. Even worse, he tried to control the investigation through organizations dominated by Russia. The president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, was furious. For the first time, he said no to Putin publicly and demanded an independent international investigation, and accused the Russians of trying to cover up the case. At that point, we can say that the trust between the two leaders had been completely broken, and the last straw was yet to come. In June 2025, two Azerbaijani brothers died in a Russian police station in the city of Yekaterinburg. The Russian police said that one died of a heart attack. But the Azerbaijani authorities did not believe that version. They decided to open an investigation for torture and murder. And things didn't stop there. Azerbaijan decided to respond in a tough and direct way. On June 30th, masked police officers raided the office of Sputnik, the Russian government news agency in Baku. They arrested the editor-in-chief and the director. On the streets, 8 Russians were detained and forced to march in a line with their heads down. While they were being filmed, the images spread around the world. It was a calculated humiliation, broadcast live, to show that Azerbaijan was no longer afraid of Russia. The Azerbaijani media went even further, comparing Russia to Germany in the 1930s. It was a direct reference to Nazism, designed to provoke maximum anger in Putin. And as expected, the Russian response came quickly. They started persecuting the 2 million Azerbaijanis who live in Russia. They arrested community leaders, revoked citizenships, and spread fear. This is an old tactic. If you can't target the country, target its people. Amid this escalation of tensions between the two countries, Ukraine decided to join the game. Zelensky personally called Aliyev, offering full support against what he called Russian bullying. For Ukraine, it was a golden opportunity to weaken Russia by opening a new front of tension. And this Ukrainian support was not just through words. Intelligence sources revealed that Ukraine shared military information with Azerbaijan, including vulnerabilities in Russian defense systems. The message was clear. If Putin wants to fight on multiple fronts, we will help. The situation became really dangerous when Russian commentators started talking about a military response to Azerbaijan. Some suggested using Russian troops stationed in Armenia to put pressure on Azerbaijan, while others talked about a total trade blockade. But here's Putin's problem. He simply can't afford to open a new conflict. And there are several reasons for that. First of all, the war in Ukraine has already consumed more than 1 million Russian soldiers, between dead and wounded. Besides that, the war has completely drained the country's military reserves. The Russian armed forces are completely focused on the Ukrainian front. Any significant diversion of resources could compromise the entire operation. Furthermore, a conflict with Azerbaijan would mean facing Turkey, a NATO member country with one of the largest armies in Europe. Turkey has already made it very clear that it will honor its military commitments to Azerbaijan, and for Putin, this could become a major nightmare. It means, in other words, the possibility of dragging NATO into the conflict. There's also the economic issue. Azerbaijan is crucial for a project that allows Russia and Iran to bypass Western sanctions. If Azerbaijan decides to block this route, it would be a devastating blow to the Russian economy. On the other hand, Azerbaijan also has its weaknesses. That's because Russia buys more than 1/3 of Azerbaijani agricultural products. A Russian trade blockade could cause massive unemployment and social instability. And knowing that, the question remains, who will blink first? Look, Putin, who is used to intimidating his neighbors, now finds himself facing an Aliyev who is no longer afraid of him. He knows that today's Russia is not the same as it was a few years ago. Aliyev, in turn, may be overestimating his new position of strength. What became quite clear is that something fundamental has changed. The era in which Russia could dictate the rules in the Caucasus region seems to be coming to an end. Azerbaijan, counting on the support of Turkey and perhaps even the West, is testing how far it can go. The response that Putin will give to this new challenge will not only define the future of relations with Azerbaijan, it will show whether Russia still has enough strength to maintain its influence over all the countries that were part of the former Soviet Empire. And you, what do you think about it? Do you believe that Azerbaijan and Russia might be on the verge of entering into conflict? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and share the video with people who might be interested in this topic. That helps us a lot. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.